After years of supporting my sister Olivia, through absolutely everything, one cold, impersonal text message erased me from her perfect day. While they were busy preparing for the grand ceremony, I quietly boarded a plane to Bali. The first thing I did was turn my phone completely off. By nightfall, their supposed dream wedding had completely collapsed into chaos, and my family's frantic calls began flooding my voicemail. Growing up, Olivia and I had a complicated relationship, which wasn't helped by the 5-year age gap between us. It was the beginning of my role as a second parent in our household. "Hazel, make sure Olivia finishes her homework," Mom would say as she rushed out the door for her evening shift at the hospital. I didn't resent it at first. Olivia was a sweet kid with bouncy curls and a gap-toothed smile that could melt your heart. She would leave little thank you notes on my pillow, often with drawings of the two of us holding hands with "best sister ever" scrolled across the top. But things changed as we got older. By the time I was 17, I had been accepted to several colleges, including one offering a partial scholarship for graphic design, my passion. But it was 3 hours away, and Mom insisted she couldn't manage without me. "Just go to community college for now. Maybe in a couple of years when Olivia's older." Instead, I watched my high school friends post about dorm life and spring break trips while I worked part-time at a local print shop and took night classes. Meanwhile, Olivia blossomed into a social butterfly. Her calendar was always full of sleepovers and extracurricular activities that Mom somehow always managed to drive her to, despite her supposedly overwhelming schedule. His guilt manifested in lavish gifts for Olivia, while I received practical items like gas cards and grocery store gift certificates. I was the reliable one, the fixer, the emotional support system. That's why when Dave entered the picture 2 years ago, I should have recognized the warning signs immediately. Olivia met him at a friend's birthday party, and within weeks he was all she talked about. Dave was 33, worked in finance, and had the kind of polished charm that immediately put me on edge. "He's taking me to this exclusive restaurant tonight," Olivia gushed during one of our weekly coffee dates. "The waiting list is months long, but he knows the owner." Little inconsistencies began to appear in his stories. Most concerning was how he suddenly started to isolate Olivia from her friends and family. "Dave thinks it's better if we save for our future instead of going out with your friends so much," she explained when canceling our plans for the 3rd time in a month. She stopped posting on social media without his approval. Her once bubbly personality became subdued in his presence, her eyes constantly darting to him for validation before she dared to speak. "He's such a gentleman," Mom said after meeting him. "And he's got such a good head on his shoulders. Olivia needs someone like that." "He already told me about her. She's a client," she snapped. "Why are you always so suspicious of anyone who makes me happy?" Around the same time, Olivia began borrowing money from our parents, giving vague explanations about temporary cash flow issues that never quite added up. When I suggested she might want to be more careful with her finances, she accused me of being jealous. When I tried one last time to voice my concerns to our parents, Dave had somehow gotten to them first. "Dave mentioned you might say something like this," Mom said, her expression dripping with disappointment. Dad was more blunt. What I didn't realize then was how spectacularly it would all unravel. Despite my deep misgivings about Dave, I was determined to make this special for Olivia. The initial planning phase was actually fun. Olivia and I spent weekends creating Pinterest boards, visiting venues, and giggling over ridiculous wedding traditions. Something elegant but not stuffy, you know? "What would I do without you, Hazel?" she said, hugging me tightly after we put down the deposit. The words warmed something in me that had been cold for a very long time. We went dress shopping together, and I had to hold back tears watching Olivia twirl in a delicate lace gown that transformed her from my little sister into a radiant bride-to-be. "You girls," she sniffled. "My beautiful girls." The shift began when Olivia introduced me to Julia, supposedly an old college friend who had experience in event planning. From the moment she joined our planning sessions, the entire dynamic changed. "That's a sweet idea, Hazel," she would say with a thin, condescending smile. Somehow, Julia was suddenly present at every single meeting, every decision. The two of them formed a united front, with Olivia increasingly deferring to their judgment. "Julia thinks we should go with the more expensive florist," Olivia told me, completely ignoring the careful budget I'd created. Dave says not to worry about the money. I might have written it off as wedding excitement clouding her judgment, except for the subtle looks I caught passing between Dave and Julia when they thought no one was watching. A private smile here, a lingering touch on the arm there. The exclusion began subtly. A meeting with the photographer was rescheduled without anyone informing me. I thought she was keeping everyone in the loop. Then came the bachelorette party. A weekend getaway I knew nothing about until I saw the photos plastered all over Instagram. There were 8 women, including Julia as the apparent organizer, celebrating at a vineyard I had actually suggested months earlier. It was just a last-minute thing, and I knew you had that big project deadline. Julia offered to handle everything. As we reviewed the processional order, the coordinator looked at her notes with clear confusion. So Julia will be your maid of honor, and Hazel is a bridesmaid, correct? The woman looking back at me seemed tired, diminished somehow. I had forgotten my phone at Olivia's apartment and quietly returned to retrieve it. What about the sister? Julia asked. She's suspicious. Dave's laugh was cold and sharp. Hazel? Don't worry about her. By the time she figures anything out, we'll be long gone. Besides, Olivia barely listens to a word she says anymore. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't just about wedding planning or petty jealousies. I waited until they moved to another room before silently retrieving my phone and leaving like a ghost. I researched Dave. Past the surface-level social media profiles and professional headshot was a disturbing history of small claims court cases, a bankruptcy filing from 3 years ago, and most alarmingly, a news article about investment fraud allegations that were ultimately dropped when the primary witness decided not to pursue charges. Armed with this information, I made one final attempt to warn my sister. I invited her to lunch, carefully prepared my evidence, and gently tried to open her eyes. I never even got to show her my findings. You can't stand that I'm happy. You've always been jealous because everyone loves me more easily than they love you. Dave warned me you'd try something like this before the wedding. He said you can't stand not being the center of attention. If you loved me, you'd be happy for me, she snapped, gathering her purse. I don't want to hear another word against Dave. In fact, I don't want to hear anything from you until you can learn to be supportive. Later that evening, both of our parents called to express their profound disappointment in my attempt to sabotage Olivia's happiness. We raised you better than this, Hazel, Mom said, her voice tight with disapproval. That son of a gun Dave told me you might pull something like this. Can't you just let your sister have her moment? What wasn't clear was how dramatically the real story would soon unfold, or how sweet silence could taste when the truth finally emerged. The message came on a Tuesday morning, just 3 weeks before the wedding. I was getting ready for work, my bridesmaid dress hanging on my closet door as a stark reminder that I needed to schedule the final fitting. My phone chirped with a text from Olivia, and I opened it, expecting some detail about the rehearsal dinner. After careful consideration, we've decided to trim our guest list to reduce costs and avoid potential conflicts. I regret to inform you that we won't be able to include you in our special day after all. I hope you understand. This is what's best for everyone. I read the message 3 times, convinced it had to be some kind of terrible joke. The formal, sterile language was so unlike Olivia's usual texting style, it felt like an additional slap in the face. These were someone else's words coming through her phone. My hands shaking, I called her immediately. The call went straight to voicemail. I tried again with the same result. Finally, I called our mother, my voice breaking as I asked her if she knew about this. Oh, Hazel, Mom sighed, confirming my worst fears. Olivia and Dave feel it's for the best. There's been so much tension, and they just want their day to be perfect. Tension? I echoed in disbelief. Mom, I'm her sister. Her only sister. The implication hung in the air between us. Does Dad know about this? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Mom hesitated. That phrase, Olivia's day, had become the shield behind which all manner of hurts and exclusions could be justified. As I sat on my bed, mascara streaming down my face, I opened Instagram almost on autopilot. It was Olivia, Julia, and 4 other women at a final dress-fitting celebration. Julia was tagged as maid of honor, wearing a dress that looked suspiciously like the one that had been designed for me, just in a different color. As I scrolled through the comments, another betrayal revealed itself. Voluntarily stepped back. My head spun with the sickening realization that Olivia was actively lying about what had happened, painting herself as the reasonable one and me as the magnanimous sister making a sacrifice for her happiness. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah herself. "Hey girl. So sorry to hear you dropped out of the wedding party. Olivia said you felt it would be too stressful with everything going on in your life. We'll miss you. XOXO. I didn't respond. Around noon, a terrible suspicion led me to check my parents' iPad, which I'd helped set up and was still logged into my mother's Apple account. There I found a family group chat I wasn't a part of. Dave. I think we need to consider removing Hazel from the wedding party and guest list. She's been trying to control everything and creates negative energy whenever she's around. I'm worried about how that will affect Olivia on our special day. Dad. That seems extreme. She is family after all. Dave. She's afraid to hurt Hazel's feelings, but she admitted she'd feel more relaxed if she didn't have to worry about Hazel's judgment on the big day. Dad. Shouldn't we at least talk to Hazel first? Give her a chance to understand how her behavior is affecting her sister. Dave. Robert, with all due respect, a confrontation will only make things worse. A clean break for the wedding period would be healthier for everyone. We can all work on repairing the relationship after the honeymoon. Mom. I think Dave is right. Olivia deserves to have her perfect day without walking on eggshells. Not once did anyone strongly advocate for me or question the fundamental wrongness of excluding an immediate family member from such an important event. The final message from Dave sealed it. And in my time of need, not a single person in my family had truly stood up for me. It was in that moment of stark clarity that something inside me finally shifted. A lifetime of putting others first crystallized into a single powerful realization. The bridesmaid dress I'd already paid for hung unworn in my closet. The non-refundable plane ticket to the destination and the hotel room deposit represented nearly $1,000 of my hard-earned money. I had been the surrogate parent when our mother couldn't be there, the practical problem solver when things went wrong. And when I finally raised legitimate concerns about Dave, I was cast as the villain, the jealous sister, the troublemaker who couldn't let Olivia have her day. No more, I whispered to my empty apartment. The ticket was non-refundable, but it could be changed for a fee. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as a wild thought took shape. What if, instead of swallowing this hurt like I had so many others, I used these resources for myself? What if, for once, I prioritized my own happiness? I remembered a travel documentary I'd watched years ago about Bali. The lush landscapes, spiritual retreats, and sense of peace had captivated me. For the first time in recent memory, it felt absolutely right. Once the new ticket was confirmed, a profound sense of liberation washed over me. I wasn't going to plead my case to family members who had already decided I was the problem. Instead, I was going to remove myself from the equation entirely and focus on healing the parts of me that had been neglected for so long. The next morning, I requested emergency personal leave from work, something I had accumulated plenty of, but had rarely ever used. Her words struck a chord. How many people had seen this pattern in my life while I remained completely blind to it? I purchased a new swimsuit, hiking sandals, and a journal with a handmade leather cover. Each purchase felt like a declaration: I matter. My desires matter. My healing matters. I booked a small, peaceful resort on the eastern coast of Bali, far from the touristy areas. The pictures showed simple bungalows nestled among tropical gardens, a yoga deck overlooking the ocean, and hammocks strung between palm trees. In it, I poured out 30 years of hurt, sacrifice, and disappointment. About recognizing the toxic patterns that had shaped our relationships, and my new determination to break free of them. In the end, I decided on minimal information. For work, I set up an out-of-office reply stating simply that I was on personal leave without access to email, providing my colleagues' contact information for urgent matters. The final piece was my phone. Once I boarded that plane, I would turn it off completely for at least the first 48 hours of my trip. Just me, focusing on myself, probably for the first time in my adult life. As I zipped my suitcase closed, a deep sense of peace settled over me. Now I was choosing to step away entirely, to find center stage in my own life story. What I didn't know then was that my quiet exit would coincide with a spectacular implosion, and that my silence would speak volumes in the chaos that followed. The journey to Bali was long, nearly 20 hours of flying time plus layovers. But each mile put between me and home felt like a physical weight lifting from my shoulders. By the time my plane touched down in Denpasar, it was early evening local time. The air that greeted me as I exited the airport was warm and heavy with unfamiliar scents: frangipani flowers, incense, and lush tropical vegetation. A driver from the resort met me, his smile genuine as he placed a small flower garland around my neck and helped with my luggage. First time anywhere by myself, I admitted. He nodded as if this made perfect sense. Bali is good for finding yourself. Many people come here lost and leave found. My bungalow sat nestled among flowering trees with a small private porch facing the ocean. After unpacking, I walked along the beach as the last light of day painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. Couples strolled hand in hand, and families played in the gentle surf, but I felt no loneliness in my solitude. Instead, there was a novel sense of possibility, of space opening up all around me. When the waiter asked if I'd like to see the dessert menu, I said yes, without a second thought, a small rebellion against years of denying myself simple pleasures. In the afternoon, I joined a small group for a batik painting class, creating colorful patterns on cloth with hot wax and dyes. That was exactly what I was learning to navigate in my own life. That evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset, I found myself thinking of Olivia. By my calculation, it was now the night before her wedding back home. For a brief moment, I felt a sharp pang of guilt. The guilt faded, replaced by a firm sense of resolve. I was exactly where I needed to be. The second morning of my stay began with a guided meditation session at sunrise. The instructor, a serene woman named Au, spoke about the importance of releasing attachments that no longer served us. After breakfast, curiosity finally got the better of me. What I found exceeded even my wildest imagination. 23 voicemails, multiple email notifications and social media alerts by the dozen. Heart racing, I checked the most recent messages first. From Mom, sent just 3 hours ago. Hazel, please call as soon as you get this. We're worried sick. We need to know you're safe. From Olivia, the most recent message. Hazel, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please call me. Everything's fallen apart, and I need my big sister. From Mom, yesterday afternoon. The wedding's been called off. Dave left a note for Olivia. He's been having an affair with Julia. He took all the money from their joint account. Please call me. From Dad, around the same time. That son of a gun cleaned out their savings account. $30,000 gone. Police have been called. Where are you? From another bridesmaid. Guests are showing up and there's no wedding. It's complete chaos. Someone said you tried to warn everyone about Dave. Is that true? Apparently, Dave and Julia had vanished the night before the wedding, leaving behind a brief note in which Dave confessed to their affair and apologized for the inconvenience. According to several messages, she had suffered a panic attack so severe that paramedics had been called. The most revealing message came from Sarah. Julia told me last week that she and Dave had been planning this for months. She was laughing about it, but I thought she was joking. I should have said something. I'm so sorry, Hazel. As I sat there processing this avalanche of information, my phone rang in my hand. It was my mother. Hazel. Oh, thank God. Mom's voice was thick with tears. We've been trying to reach you for days. Are you all right? Vacation? Where? We've been worried sick. I know. I just read the messages. The validation I had longed for was finally being offered, but it felt hollow in the wake of such utter chaos. Part of me wanted to scream, I told you so. But the words stuck in my throat as I thought of Olivia's pain. After being explicitly uninvited from her life's biggest moment, I was now being summoned to help pick up the pieces. Mom, I'm in Bali, I said finally. I used the plane ticket and hotel money to come here instead. The old Hazel would have immediately booked the next flight back, ready to resume her role as the family fixer. My return flight is booked for next week, I said calmly. I need this time, Mom. For me. I had been right about Dave all along, but there was no satisfaction in that knowledge. Only a deep sadness for Olivia and a simmering anger at the way my concerns had been so easily dismissed. Then I put my phone on silent, tucked it deep into my bag and headed to the beach. I had come to Bali to heal, and despite the chaos unfolding at home, that was exactly what I intended to do. Over the next 2 days I maintained minimal contact with my family, checking messages once in the morning and once in the evening, but otherwise focusing on my Bali experience. The full ugly story of what had transpired continued to unfold through texts, calls, and social media updates. Dave had not only emptied the joint account containing Olivia's life savings of $50,000, but he had also somehow gained access to the separate account where the wedding deposits were held, another $25,000 that had been contributed by both sets of parents. The most damning revelation came from Megan, another bridesmaid, who finally found the courage to speak up. She was bragging about it, Megan's voice message explained, shaking with guilt. I had been systematically removed precisely because I had seen through their facade. What truly broke my heart was the email I received from my mother, forwarding some of Olivia's journal entries from the months leading up to the wedding. Dave says Hazel is too controlling, one entry read. She's jealous of our happiness because she's alone. I don't want to believe that about my sister, but she is always questioning everything about him. Maybe she is envious. Dave says I need to create boundaries, that family can be toxic even when they don't mean to be. It hurts to pull away from Hazel, but Dave says it's necessary for our relationship to thrive. Another entry, dated just a week before I was cut from the guest list, was even more revealing. The manipulation was textbook emotional abuse, and it made me sick to see how effectively Dave had turned Olivia against me. But amid my anger at him, I couldn't help but feel the deep hurt that my own sister had been so easily convinced to cast me aside. On the 3rd day of my stay, I received a direct message from Olivia, the first communication initiated by her since the infamous disinvitation text. Hazel, I don't know if you're reading these, and I understand if you never want to speak to me again. I'm not asking for your help or advice. I just want you to know how deeply, deeply sorry I am. I let Dave convince me that your concerns came from jealousy, not from love. I chose him over the one sister who has always been there for me, and I will regret that for the rest of my life. You tried to warn me and I punished you for it. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know that I understand now what you were trying to do. Take all the time you need in Bali. You deserve this break and so much more. For the first time since arriving on the island, I felt tears rolling down my cheeks. They weren't tears of hurt or anger, but of a strange, quiet relief. Later that afternoon, while relaxing by the pool, I struck up a conversation with Diana, a 45-year-old woman from Seattle who was celebrating her divorce with a solo trip. Families can be wonderful, but they can also be toxic, she told me when I shared a simplified version of my situation. The hardest lesson I ever learned was that you can love people from a distance. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. How do you maintain that distance without cutting ties completely? I asked, genuinely curious. Boundaries, honey. Clear, consistent boundaries. I love you, but I won't let you treat me that way. I care about you, but I need to care about myself too. It feels impossible at first, especially if you've been the family fixer like me, but eventually they either respect your boundaries, or they reveal that they never truly respected you. Her words resonated so deeply. Then you have valuable information, Diana replied simply, and you make your decisions accordingly. That evening, I returned to my bungalow and found a lengthy email from Olivia. The worst part, she concluded, is that I still sometimes miss him. The therapist says that's normal with abusive relationships, but it makes me feel crazy and weak. How can I miss someone who systematically destroyed my life? Someone who deliberately targeted me for who I am. Naive, trusting, eager to please. The same qualities that you always tried to help me balance with critical thinking. It was the most honest communication we'd had in years, maybe ever. There was no request for me to come home, no expectation that I would rush to her rescue, just raw vulnerability, and an implicit acknowledgement that our relationship had been fundamentally changed by what had happened. After careful consideration, I responded, Olivia, thank you for your honesty. I'm still processing everything, and I need this time in Bali to focus on my own healing. What happened with Dave is not your fault. You were targeted by someone skilled at manipulation and control. But the decision to cut me out hurt deeply, especially after a lifetime of putting our family's needs before my own. I care about you and want you to heal, but I also need to prioritize myself right now. When I return, we can talk more about rebuilding our relationship, if that's what we both want. Take care of yourself, Hazel. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was an opening a possibility for something new to grow from the ashes of what had been destroyed. And for now, that was enough. I learned to scuba dive, conquering a lifelong fear of deep water. Family, she said, placing her hand over my heart. Old pain here. New strength growing. On my last evening, I finally called Olivia directly. After the initial awkwardness, we had the most honest conversation of our adult lives. I keep thinking about all the times you tried to help me, she said, her voice small but steady. I don't know if I know how to be your sister without taking care of you, I replied. But I'd really like to learn. The morning of my departure, I woke before dawn and walked along the beach one last time. The woman who had arrived in Bali a week ago, devastated by rejection and family betrayal, was not the same woman who was leaving. I had learned that setting boundaries wasn't selfish, but essential for survival. Most importantly, I had found a sense of peace within myself that didn't depend on anyone else's validation. When I landed back home, I didn't immediately rush to see my family as they might have expected. Instead, I took another day for myself, unpacking, doing laundry, and preparing mentally for the conversations to come. The family meeting that followed was uncomfortable but absolutely necessary. Sitting in my parents' living room with Olivia, perched nervously on the edge of the sofa, I outlined what I needed moving forward. Mom started to protest, but Dad surprised me by placing his hand gently on her arm. Let her finish, Susan. We owe her that much. The changes didn't happen overnight. There were slips and misunderstandings, moments when old patterns tried to reassert themselves. But slowly, surely, our family dynamic began to shift. She began to stand on her own 2 feet, making decisions without seeking constant approval. Dad started making a real effort to connect with me directly, not just as an extension of my role in the family. 6 months after the wedding that never was, I made another significant change. I left my steady but unfulfilling job to pursue freelance graphic design, something I dreamed of since college. A year later, life looked so different, yet so much more authentic. Olivia, after months of therapy and hard work, found her own passion. She opened a small, charming bakery downtown, and she was my very first client. I designed her logo, her menus, everything. Our parents are our biggest cheerleaders now, finally seeing us as 2 capable, independent women, not as the roles we used to play. Not because I was looking, but because I was finally whole on my own. It was an invitation. Have you ever had a moment that felt like a devastating loss, only for it to become your greatest gift? Share your story of transformation in the comments below. Your journey could inspire someone else who really needs to hear it today. And if my story resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more stories about finding strength in the most unexpected places.